They say you are what you eat, and that's true to a certain extent. Diet has a profound effect on how our bodies change throughout life. Now, recent discoveries have revealed that carbohydrates could be a key weapon in the fight against aging. Specifically, they can boost resistance to a common disease that is especially detrimental to seniors. Indeed, alongside advances in medicine, this new dietary discovery could be a game changer for healthier living. And it's not just beneficial for the elderly either. The condition in question affects younger people occasionally too. So the real question is, would it involve a drastic shift in what you eat? Perhaps surprisingly, the answer is no. Carbohydrates are found in a wide variety of foods, and if you're into healthy eating you may already be on the right path. At least, that's the current theory, according to lab experiments and research into how brains age. Here's what experts think you should be eating, and why it can help you now in your golden years. To begin with, it's important to understand what carbohydrates, or carbs in short, are. They're actually among the main groups of food that we should be eating daily. However, some of the modern dieting trends tend to exclude carbs or label them bad for your health, when studies in fact show the opposite is true. Dietitian and nutrition specialist Paige Smothers, who works on the blog Positive Nutrition, confirms as much. Carbohydrates are macronutrients, meaning they are one of the three main ways the body attains energy, or calories, she told Live Science in 2017. Human bodies convert carbs, which are composed of carbon, oxygen and hydrogen, into energy. Indeed, they're among the primary sources in our energy-making process. Alongside fat and protein, carbohydrates are part of the macronutrients trio that we need in large quantities. Without them we couldn't function, but our bodies don't automatically generate these substances. The only way we humans can obtain macronutrients, then, is by consuming them through food, and carbs are no exception. Fortunately, the cellulose, sugars and starches that populate carbohydrate groups are abundant in commonplace foods. You can find them in fruits and vegetables, for example, as well as bread, potatoes and even dairy products. Muscles convert carbs to energy when we move and, according to Smothers, they act as a quick energy source. But their usefulness runs deeper than that. Carbohydrates are important for brain function, Smothers noted. She also revealed that they impact upon memory function and mood. And scientific studies published in 2017 confirmed the nutritionist's statements. The findings of these studies were published in the U.S. scientific journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They demonstrated that when participants took part in a game that measured fairness, those who had consumed high levels of carbs showed less altruism than participants who'd eaten lots of protein. For many people, carbohydrates can fall into one of two camps, good carbs or bad carbs. And deciding which food belongs in which category is far simpler than it sounds. Bad, or simple as they are technically known, carbs have a more basic chemical structure, meaning the body processes them a lot more rapidly. They're found mostly in unhealthy foods such as pastries, soda and even white bread. Simple carbohydrates are considered bad for you because they generally don't contain anything of nutritional value. Although they provide a short boost of energy, then, you receive almost no other dietary benefits from them. Furthermore, the National Institute of Health, NIH, states that consuming these so-called empty calories can adversely affect your weight and blood sugar. CAMP2 houses the good, or complex, to give them their proper name, carbohydrates. While your body still converts them rapidly, their more intricate chemical structures make the process slightly slower. Furthermore, these complex carbs are much more beneficial and yield a much steadier energy release. Indeed, Smothers fully endorsed them. It's best to focus on getting primarily complex carbs in your diet, including whole grains and vegetables, Smothers revealed. What people typically label as starchy foods, such as potatoes, corn, whole grain bread, cereal and peas, are considered complex carbs. But why are carbohydrates preferred over proteins? Well, the answer lies in the different ways in which you process these substances. Your liver transforms the sugar from ingested carbohydrates into glucose and sends it into your bloodstream for energy production. The body then either uses it to power your muscles or stores it for future use as glycogen. However, if you consume anything more than around 2,000 calories, any excess carbohydrates will turn into fat. However, if your body doesn't have enough carbs to function, it looks for an alternative source of energy, protein. This sounds like a good thing, but protein is a muscle-building nutrient and isn't ideal for conversion this way. As a result, it overworks another organ, the kidneys, specifically, which causes problems when you need to pass water. In addition, you can see the benefits of leading a high-carb diet in cultures around the world. Take the people of Okinawa, Japan, for example. Okinawa is the biggest in a group of islands collectively called the Ryukyu Islands. It's also renowned for the longevity of its citizens, who rank as some of the world's longest living people. Okinawa is what experts refer to as a blue zone. There are 5 of these regions worldwide. The life expectancy of the population of a blue zone is significantly longer than any other, with the inhabitants living particularly healthy lives. And research into this phenomenon suggests the secret lies in the food their citizens are consuming. Consequently, some experts are scrutinizing the local diets. Indeed, there is now a Western eating plan called the Okinawa Diet that aims to replicate the island's cuisine. Of course, while the lifestyles of traditional Okinawans shape their diet, the Western version is designed as a weight loss program. As you've probably guessed, it involves a lot of carbs and very little fat or calories. The Okinawa diet contains very little meat except for some white fish and, very occasionally, pork. Instead, grains and vegetables make up most of the foods. Furthermore, the Okinawan people also ingest a lot of antioxidants in the form of herbs and spices such as turmeric. However, it's worth noting some significant differences between traditional Okinawan cuisine and the Western version of the diet. Things such as fruit, for example, which is limited on the Japanese island, aren't often included. In the Western program, though, they're allowed in more frequent doses. The Okinawa diet eschews cereal because it's processed, and dairy products aren't included either. Whereas eating habits are probably only one factor, Okinawa Island certainly has an impressively healthy senior community. Indeed, it has the highest concentration of inhabitants aged 100 or over on the planet. Illnesses and diseases are rare there too. Moreover, back in 2015, New York's Columbia University performed a study on the health benefits of the Mediterranean diet. Yungu, the study's lead author, subsequently announced his team's findings, and they were enlightening to say the least. They highlighted how what you eat can affect the rate at which your brain ages. For instance, these results are exciting, as they raise the possibility that people may potentially prevent brain shrinking and the effects of aging on the brain simply by following a healthy diet, Gu told The Guardian. So, what's special about the Mediterranean diet, and what type of food does it encompass? Well, much like the Okinawa diet, the Mediterranean one contains lots of vegetables and little red meat. But it differs on a few key ingredients because fruits, dairy and cereals feature more in the cuisine. Nevertheless, it's still a dietary plan based on carbohydrates as the main source of energy. The news that carbs are actually good for you goes against the preconceptions of some recent diet plans, however. Low-carb, high-fat, LCHF, eating plans began in Sweden and then picked up steam in Scandinavia before making their way elsewhere. Moreover, officials allegedly investigated the Swedish doctor Annika Dahlqvist for advising patients to begin LCHF programs. The investigation apparently redeemed Dahlqvist's reputation, though, when it found some merit to her suggestions. LCHF plans encourage full-fat dairy consumption and animal products over carbohydrate-rich food. So, knowing what we do about the health benefits of carbs, how could LCHF diets be deemed a good alternative? Well, they might be good for diabetes sufferers, for example. As we've seen, when the body digests carbohydrates, it converts them into sugar that flows into the bloodstream. This then generates insulin that helps the body absorb the sugar. As patients with diabetes struggle to generate insulin, though, this low-carb diet provides a suitable alternative. However, the fat content in the LCHF diet can also increase body inflammation in some diabetic patients. As a result, it's always best to consult with a doctor before changing diet plans. In addition, research has unearthed further potential pitfalls of the LCHF diet. it has been found that it could also adversely affect the bacteria in your gut, for instance. By and large, then, the high-carb diet perhaps seems to be a healthier alternative, at least in the long run. Furthermore, a study by the University of Sydney uncovered more indications that carbs may protect the brain from deterioration in its senior years. Basing their research on diets from blue zones, the scientists in the Australian study experimented with carbohydrate-rich foods on mice. While the animals' fat intake stayed the same, researchers gave the rodents differing quantities of dairy-based proteins and starch-based complex carbohydrates. They set the mice into a puzzle-laden maze at different life stages to document the results. The study's leader, Professor David Lacoulter, relayed the results. The mice that were fed the least protein but the most carbs retained the best brain activity throughout their lives. And this was especially true of the females of the species. Couture's team went on to study the brains of the mice in more detail, paying particular attention to the hippocampus. Interestingly, the hippocampus acts as the memory retention center of the brain and governs learning. The hippocampus is usually the first part of the brain to deteriorate with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Couture told The Independent. In case you didn't know, Alzheimer's disease, AD, is the leading cause of dementia in the elderly. AD generally causes gradual but increasing memory loss followed by a slew of symptoms. They include disorientation, speech problems and challenging behavior until the body shuts down completely. And while it's often considered a disease of the elderly, there's an early onset strain of the disease too. It generally strikes people at middle age, or, on rare occasions, even earlier. Much about the causes of AD is still unknown, however, so findings such as those made by Couture and his team are extremely important. The mice study indicates that carbs are an essential component to maintaining a healthy brain function. Furthermore, studies into low-calorie diets have proven to be important weapons in the fight against mental deterioration. However, they have also been impractical for many people. That's because some of the most convincing conclusions from the low-calorie studies have been derived from monastic communities, where fasting is a frequent occurrence. However, this level of abstinence is not reflected in most people's everyday lives. Now, though, it seems like there's an alternative using a high-carbohydrate diet. The low-protein high-carbohydrate diet appeared to promote hippocampus health and biology in the mice, on some measures, to an even greater degree than those on the low-calorie diet, Couture explained to The Independent. Authored by Devin Wall, the study was printed in a scientific journal called Cell Reports. There are currently no effective pharmaceutical treatments for dementia, Wall stated. We can slow these diseases, but we can't stop them. So it's exciting that we are starting to identify diets that are impacting how the brain ages. He also indicated that finding an alternative to low-calorie diets could raise the standard of living in the elderly for the future. It shows a lot of promise that we have been able to replicate the same kind of gene changes in the part of the brain responsible for memory that we also see when we severely restrict calories, Wall continued. But why do low-calorie diets, and high-carbohydrate ones, help the brain resist AD exactly? Well, it's all linked to the FGF21 hormone that was prevalent in rodents eating the 5% protein plan. The hormone actually decreases the chances of some health problems. Conditions such as diabetes, obesity and even heart disease are less likely where there's a higher concentration of FGF21, for example. And this in turn fights AD. It's far too early to state conclusively that these diets help in the prevention of dementia, of course. But the head of research at the Alzheimer's Society, Dr. James Pickett, was nonetheless guardedly optimistic about the findings. Although this study looked at brain aging generally and not dementia specifically, mounting evidence highlights the relationship between lifestyle factors such as diet and dementia risk, Pickett told The Independent. So, Alzheimer's Society is funding a long-term study of 700 people at risk of dementia to better understand these links.